Hello and welcome to the 3D Blu-ray Bunker. This is where we die-hard fans of 3D look exclusively at 3D Blu-rays and almost entirely focus on the quality of the 3D on offer. So unlike most reviews, which very reasonably focus on the film itself with perhaps a few short comments at the end about the 3D, here we do things the other way around. And today we're looking at The Martian, Ridley Scott's 2015 film about a lone astronaut's attempt to survive having been marooned on Mars. The aspect ratio is 2.4 to 1. And the film was natively shot in 3D. And the cinematographer Dariusz Wolski also photographed Robert Zemeckis' 3D film The Walk in the same year, although that film was shot in 2D and post-converted to 3D. So let's have a look at how The Martian's native 3D shapes up. As soon as the film opens, we see some serious 3D. Mars is shown not as a flat disk, but as a visibly spherical object, which is something that would obviously be impossible with the naked eye. And this hyperstereo shot, rather than being natively filmed, is presumably, like a lot of the best stereoscopy in the film, natively rendered 3D CGI. And judging by the look of Mars here, the separation between the two camera lenses would have to be not the standard 2.5 odd inches, but more like thousands of miles, I should think. It's a fantastic shot and a great and unusual way to see the planet. If you look at the massive scar here on Mars's surface, which I think is Valles Marineris, the 3D makes it look way deeper than the 6 or 7 miles that this canyon actually measures. But I really like this view, and it sets things up nicely. And there's a similar shot of Earth with the same level of dimensionality to it. And like the canyon on Mars, the clouds here are placed way higher above the planet than they actually would be. These aren't criticisms at all, as hyperstereo is absolutely my favourite flavour of 3D. By the way, the star field is flat, which is something I've seen in some 3D films have depth added to it, but in doing so that would imply a camera with the distance between its lenses being probably measured actually literally in light years. We get several Martian landscape shots throughout the film, which all offer different views at varied times of the day with different weathers, which, like the view of the planet, are all hyperstereo and they look superb. They're probably stunning, brilliant 3D shots. And this view of one of Mars's two moons, which I think is Phobos, clearly places it deep in the screen, behind and beyond the clouds, and it's one of my favourite shots in the film. It's often difficult for me to know what's real and what's CG in effects-heavy films like this, but I'm assuming that these spacecraft interiors are probably partly sets and partly CG, and shots like this down the ladder, or long corridor shots like this, should look good in 3D, and here they really do look incredible. There's vast amounts of depth stretching way back into the screen. Other great moments include this dust storm, with the particles coming out of the screen, although since it's a violent storm they're moving so quickly that you don't fully feel them floating in front of you. But when these particles are combined with the long view down the ladder, you get a view that really is a fantastic piece of 3D composition. In other areas, the production design looks really well planned for 3D. The interior of the Mars base here has various things populating the set from left to right and front to back. And there's the usual view of mission control that we've seen from dozens of space travel films, but here in 3D those banks of screens look way better than ever. These rows of journalists are in excellent composition, and when the camera pulls back from the rear view, it's another great 3D moment. And hopefully not much of a spoiler here, but this shot of the Martian's potato crop is an excellent example of where the native 3D photography does a more perfect job of creating detailed solidity than a conversion would be able to achieve with such a complex view. So that's a lot of positives, but there are some elements of the 3D in the film that I thought were a little bit less impressive, and my biggest complaint is with the medium and close shots of faces, of which there are quite a few throughout, where they always look almost totally flat, with that cardboard cutout effect that people talk about. There's clearly depth from the person to the background, but their face just doesn't impress. Apologies, not yours personally, Jeff Daniels, just the way it's photographed. This is something that you see in other 3D films, not always, but I find it more disappointing when faces look like this in a film that's natively shot, and certainly you'll see plenty of post-converted films where faces fill the 3D space in a much more pleasing way. On top of that, there are a lot of shots in the film where Matt Damon is recording his video log, and they're all in 2D, although they do place the text and information in front of that flat plane to keep things at least a little bit interesting. But what I found slightly odd here, and again perhaps a little bit disappointing, is that Matt Damon's video cameras are all GoPros, and with the way films are made these days, that presumably means that GoPro was a paid-for, placed product. I've got no complaints about that, but the thing I found odd is that a couple of years before the film was made, GoPro did actually launch its own 3D camera system, so my disappointment is that they didn't use one or two of those in the film, and consequently allowed, therefore, for the video log to be in 3D. And it might have helped them to actually sell a few of them as well. I think GoPro gave up on that system a few years ago. Incidentally, when Jake Sully records his video logs in Avatar, they are in 3D because James Cameron rather excellently saw fit to clearly provide him with a nifty little 3D webcam. And weirdly enough, the film managed to disappoint me slightly a second time regarding in-film 3D cameras. The old Pathfinder rover comes into the story, and the first time we see it, it's a nice reminder that this thing had been fitted with a 3D camera, and in case there was any doubt about that, this close-up makes it so apparent that we're looking at a 3D camera within a 3D film. So surely it's fair to assume that we're about to get a nice stereo viewpoint from Pathfinder's camera, but for some reason we never do. For a film that's happy to go with an in-joke about the Council of Elrond in a scene featuring Lord of the Rings actor Sean Bean, I'd have thought they could have let another in-joke in about 3D cameras, but sadly not. Like I say, those aren't really complaints, but just things that I thought could have been done a little bit better. So back to some positives, and along with all this stunning Martian landscape shots, we also get top-down views with really strong 3D that are absolutely amongst the standout visual moments in the film. And as well as those superb interior views of the spacecraft, we also see the thing in very strong 3D from the outside, which is also another real highlight. Pop-outs aren't really something that the film is too interested in. There's an explosion which throws a lot of stuff out at us, but as is very frequently the case with these pop-out moments in films, it only lasts for a few frames, so it's over before you can feel fully immersed in it. What could have been a really good pop-out scene is this moment where an astronaut is doing what I assume NASA instructs them to do on day one of spaceman training, and that's mess around with a glob of water in front of the camera. Whenever you see this done in real life, it's always a fairly slow-moving scene, so it could have been a perfect opportunity to let a ball of water float right in front of us, but it never really does, sadly. So I think I may have made the 3D in this film sound a little bit more of a mixed bag than I should have. There are certainly enough fantastic 3D moments to make this one what I would say is a must-buy, but I did think that with a few minor improvements it really could have had consistently good 3D throughout. So a quick word on the film itself. I'd say this is a pretty classy science fiction film that takes its science fairly seriously, although I suspect there are plenty of elements in the plot that would raise the eyebrow of a real space expert, but definitely nothing to spoil my enjoyment of this story of isolation and survival. Matt Damon's very watchable and engaging, even though he spends most of the film acting by himself. The rest of the cast are all very believable, the effects are top-notch, and it's got some pretty tense scenes, as well as some surprising moments of humour, although not enough to make any sense of its rather mad Golden Globe winner's best comedy. And if you're a David Bowie fan, you'll enjoy the fact that at one point his song Starman is played through in its entirety, during which, though, you'll immediately wonder why they didn't use his equally famous song Life on Mars instead. And on the subject of songs, you'll probably get the feeling that the entire storyline about one of the characters' love of 70s disco was only written into the film so that they could use the song that plays over the end credits, which is Gloria Gaynor's I Will Survive. But great song, great film, and great 3D most of the time. So I hope you found this in some way useful, and if so, I hope you'll join me again soon for another 3D Blu-ray review. Until then, thanks for looking in on this one. Cheers for now. Bye-bye.